I've always been a creature of habit. At 27, I had carved out a comfortable routine in my life, one that rarely deviated. Each morning, I left my cozy apartment in the heart of the city at exactly 7:30 a.m., stopping by the same cafe for a vanilla latte before heading to my job as a graphic designer at a trendy downtown agency. After work, I often met up with my best friend Jenna for dinner or a drink, then returned home to unwind with a book or a movie. It was a simple, predictable life, and I liked it that way. But that all changed the day I found the first letter. It was a Tuesday, and as usual, I arrived home just after 6 p.m. I checked my mailbox, expecting the usual assortment of bills and advertisements, but instead, there was a plain white envelope with no return address. Curious, I opened it on the spot, and my heart skipped a beat as I read the contents. 7:30 a.m. Left apartment. 7:45 a.m. Vanilla latte at Cafe Verona. 8 a.m. Arrived at work. 12:30 p.m. Lunch at the park. 6:10 p.m. Home. I'm watching you. I stared at the letter, my hands trembling. It was impossible. Who could have written this? It detailed my entire day down to the minute. I looked around nervously, half expecting to see someone watching me from the shadows, but the hallway was empty. Trying to shake off the eerie feeling creeping up my spine, I hurried inside and locked the door behind me. The next day, I showed the letter to Jenna, always the skeptic. Jenna tried to reassure me. It's probably just a prank, Jenna said, sipping her coffee. You know how people are these days. Some creep probably saw you at the cafe and decided to mess with you. Just ignore it. But I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I started paying closer attention to my surroundings, feeling eyes on me wherever I went. And then, just when I was beginning to think Jenna might be right, the second letter arrived. This one was more detailed, mentioning the exact pages of the book I had been reading at lunch and the conversation I had with a coworker about an upcoming project. The final line sent chills down my spine. You looked beautiful today. I reported the letters to the police where I met Detective Mark Davis. He was an older man, with gray streaks in his hair, and a calm demeanor that did little to ease my anxiety. He listened to my story, asked a few questions, and promised they would look into it, but I could tell he didn't think much of my case. Just another crank in a city full of them. Days turned into weeks and the letters kept coming, each one more invasive than the last. I started noticing a shadowy figure lingering across the street from my apartment late at night, always gone by the time I worked up the courage to look closer. My work suffered, my sleep became fitful, and even Jenna started to worry. Maybe you should take a break, Jenna suggested one evening. Stay at my place for a while, get away from all this. But I refused. This was my home, my life, and I wasn't going to let some faceless stalker drive me out. Instead, I took matters into my own hands. I installed security cameras outside my apartment, and even enlisted Jenna's help to keep a close eye on me. But the letters continued to arrive, mocking my attempts to find the person behind them. I started to suspect everyone around me. Daniel, a coworker who always seemed too interested in my life, was the first on my list. I confronted him at work, accusing him of sending the letters, but Daniel looked genuinely shocked and hurt by my accusations. His concern for my safety seemed real, and I left the confrontation feeling more confused than ever. My suspicions then shifted to Sam, the barista at Cafe Verona. He was always so friendly, always eager to chat when I came in. Could his interest be more than just a harmless crush? I found myself scrutinizing his every word and gesture, but there was nothing concrete, just the gnawing feeling that something was wrong. Then, one night, everything came to a head. It was a cold, rainy night, and I was alone in my apartment when the power suddenly went out. The room was plunged into darkness, and in the silence that followed I heard it. A faint rustling sound from the kitchen. My heart pounded in my chest as I grabbed the nearest object, a kitchen knife, and slowly made my way to the source of the noise. Sam, I called out, hoping against hope that it was him. He had offered to stop by after work, concerned for me after I told him about the latest letter, which had been the most disturbing yet. Tonight is the night, but there was no answer, only the oppressive silence, and the feeling that I wasn't alone. I took a deep breath and stepped into the kitchen, ready to face whatever or whoever was there, but the room was empty. Nothing out of place, No sign of an intruder. I let out a shaky laugh, feeling foolish. Then I saw it. A single white envelope sitting on the counter where there had been nothing before. My blood ran cold as I picked it up, my hands trembling. I tore it open, revealing just 3 words: "You're mine now." Before I could react, there was a knock at the door. I nearly dropped the knife in my panic, but then realized it was Sam's voice calling my name. I ran to the door, threw it open, and collapsed into his arms, relief flooding through me. "You're okay," he whispered, holding me close. "I'm here." But something was off. Sam's voice, his touch, it felt different. I pulled back, looking up at him, and in the dim light, I saw something in his eyes I had never noticed before. A cold, calculating look. "You don't need to be afraid anymore," Sam said, his voice calm. Too calm. "I've been watching over you, Mia, making sure you're safe." My heart sank as the realization hit me. Sam knew too much. About my routine, my habits, my fears. He'd always been there, always so eager to help, to be close to me. And now, as he stood in my apartment, everything fell into place. "It was you," I whispered, backing away. "You've been sending the letters." Sam smiled. A twisted, satisfied smile that made my stomach churn. "I did it for you, Mia. To protect you, to keep you close. You needed me, even if you didn't realize it." Fear and anger surged through me. I tightened my grip on the knife. Every muscle in my body tensed as I prepared for what I knew I had to do. "Put down the knife, Mia," Sam said, stepping closer, his voice soothing, but with an edge of menace. "You don't need it. I'm here now. We can be together." But I didn't lower the knife. Instead, I lunged at him with all my strength, catching him off guard. The blade connected, and Sam cried out in pain, stumbling back. Just then, the door burst open, and Detective Davis, followed by 2 officers, rushed in, guns drawn. "Drop the weapon," one of the officers shouted, and I immediately let go of the knife, tears streaming down my face. The police quickly subdued Sam, who was bleeding from a wound in his side, as they cuffed him and led him away. Detective Davis stayed behind, gently guiding me to sit down. "You're safe now," he said, his voice gentle. "It's over." But for me, it wasn't truly over. The letters, the fear, the betrayal. It would take time to heal from what I had endured. In the days that followed, the police uncovered more evidence at Sam's apartment. Drafts of the letters, photos of me taken without my knowledge, recordings of our conversations. Sam's obsession had been growing for months, unnoticed by anyone until it nearly consumed. I moved to a new apartment in a different part of the city, far from the memories of what had happened. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, and took a leave of absence from work. Detective Davis checked in on me occasionally, and Jenna visited often, offering comfort and support. In time, I began to rebuild my life. The nightmares became less frequent, the anxiety more manageable. I learned to trust again, though it wasn't easy. The experience had changed me, made me more cautious, more aware of the dangers lurking in the shadows of the world I once thought was safe. But I was a survivor. I had faced my worst fear and come out on the other side. And though I knew I would never forget the terror of being stalked, I was determined to live my life on my terms. No longer a victim, but a woman who had fought back and won. It's been 2 weeks since I broke up with Emily. The last time I saw her, we were standing on the waterfront, the Space Needle looming in the distance, and I told her it was over. She didn't take it well, which I expected. What I didn't expect was the fallout that followed. Now, here I am, standing in my 1-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, Seattle, staring at a photo of us that she left on my kitchen counter. My face is scratched out, and here, neat handwriting on the back reads, "You ruined us." A chill runs down my spine, and I can't help but glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see her standing in the shadows of my living room. But it's just me, alone with the remnants of a relationship that should have been dead and buried. I'm Alex, a software developer. I moved to Seattle for a fresh start, but now I wonder if that was a mistake. Emily was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, artistic, passionate. But over time, that passion twisted into something dark. The breakup was inevitable. but I never thought it would lead to this. Jake, my best friend since college, has been my rock through this whole ordeal. He's been urging me to go to the police, but I keep brushing it off. Then there's Mrs. Carter, my neighbor. She's in her 70s, always watching the comings and goings in the building. She told me she's seen Emily hanging around a lot recently. I didn't take her seriously, until now. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days after the breakup. I started getting texts from an unknown number, filled with blame and anger. At first, I assumed it was Emily, but when I confronted her, she laughed it off, claiming she was moving on. The text didn't stop, though. They became more personal, mentioning places I'd been, things I'd done, things only someone watching me would know. Last Tuesday, I found my car keyed outside my office in South Lake Union. Liar was scratched into the driver's side door. I knew it was her. Who else would do this? But I had no proof. Jake insisted it might just be a random act of vandalism. But deep down, I knew. The text became more aggressive, and then the notes started showing up. First, on my car, then at my apartment door, and finally, inside my apartment. How did she get in? The thought haunted me as I searched my place for signs of forced entry. There were none. I began to question everything, my memory, my sanity. But the notes were real, and they all said the same thing. You took everything from me. I started my own investigation, desperate to find out how she was doing this. I checked the building's security footage, but the tapes from the last few days were mysteriously missing. I questioned the doorman, but he hadn't seen anything unusual. I even tried talking to Emily again, but she just played the victim, accusing me of being paranoid. Jake thought I was losing it. Maybe it's not her, he suggested. Maybe someone else is trying to mess with you. But who and why? Mrs. Carter mentioned seeing another woman around, but I dismissed it. Emily was the only one who could have this level of access to my life. Then, 2 days ago, I found my apartment ransacked. Not just rummaged through, violated. My clothes were strewn everywhere, drawers pulled out, but nothing of value was taken. The only things missing were the gifts I'd given Emily, along with a few old photos. In their place was a note, written in her handwriting. You destroyed me. Now I'll destroy you. By now, I was living in a constant state of dread. Every creak, every shadow seemed like a sign that Emily was nearby. The text grew more threatening, and she began showing up in places I frequented, always just out of sight, but close enough to make her presence felt. I started to sleep with a knife under my pillow, convinced she'd break in again. The anxiety gnawed at me, making it hard to focus at work, hard to even leave my apartment. Jake was worried, and Mrs. Carter's warnings became more frequent. She was the one who told me about the woman she'd seen outside my door late at night, but she couldn't describe her clearly. It was dark, she said, but I could feel her watching. Then came the final blow. I came home last night to find my apartment door ajar. My heart pounded as I stepped inside, knife in hand. My cat Luna was gone. In her place was a single note on the kitchen counter, in that same familiar handwriting. You took everything from me. Now I'll take everything from you. I knew I had to confront Emily. I couldn't live like this anymore, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. I drove to her apartment in Ballard, my hands shaking on the wheel. She answered the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Alex, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. What a surprise. I didn't waste time. I showed her the notes, demanded to know why she was doing this. At first she denied it, but when I pushed, something inside her snapped. She started screaming at me, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong in her life. You destroyed us, she yelled. You took away my future, my happiness. Now you're going to pay. She lunged at me, and I barely managed to push her away, the knife still clenched in my hand. She fell to the floor, sobbing, and for a moment I thought about just walking away. But then, I saw the photos on her walls, photos of us twisted and torn with my face scratched out and everyone. That's when I knew this wasn't just anger, this was something far worse. I called the police and they arrived within minutes. Emily was taken into custody, still screaming that it was all my fault. The evidence they found in her apartment was overwhelming. Videos of me, taken without my knowledge, detailed notes of my daily routine, and even a diary where she planned out her revenge. Jake came over the next day to help me clean up the mess. He didn't say much, just listened as I tried to process everything that had happened. Mrs. Carter was the one who finally found Luna, hiding under the stairs in the building's basement. She was scared, but unharmed. I wasn't so lucky. As I sit in my now empty apartment, the memories of the past 2 weeks play over and over in my mind. I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over, that Emily will find a way to come back into my life. But for now, I'm trying to move on, to reclaim the sense of safety I lost. I moved to Austin, Texas, thinking it was going to be my fresh start. New city, new vibes, and a whole new me. I found this cute little apartment in a chill neighborhood, got a cool job at a design firm, and things were finally looking up. Life was actually good for once, until the items started showing up. At first I didn't really think much of it. The first thing I noticed was an old book on my coffee table, one I was sure I'd left behind when I moved out of Chicago. It was a gift from Derek, but I figured I'd just accidentally packed it. Then there was the scarf, one I'd thrown out because it reminded me too much of him. But there it was, draped over my chair like it belonged there. Weird, but I thought maybe I was just being forgetful. But then, it started getting creepier. My favorite necklace, one that Derek had given me for our first anniversary, was hanging on the doorknob when I got home one night. I knew I had tossed it in the trash months ago, but here it was, like it had never left my side. That's when the alarm bells started ringing. These weren't just random coincidences. Derek was here. Derek and I had been together for 3 years, and when it was good, it was great. But when it was bad, it was a nightmare. When I finally got the guts to leave him, he told me I'd regret it. Never in a million years did I think he'd actually follow through on that threat, but here we are. And no matter what I do, he's always one step ahead. It's like he knows my every move, where I am, who I'm with, even what I'm wearing. It's freaking terrifying. The first time I saw him, I was out on a morning run around Lady Bird Lake. He was just standing there, across the water, staring at me like some psycho. I legit froze, but when I blinked, he was gone. Just like that. I tried telling myself it wasn't real, that I was just being paranoid, but that feeling of being watched, it never left. Things started getting even weirder. I'd come home and find my toothbrush moved, or my clothes slightly off in the closet. I had locks, security cameras, everything, but it didn't matter. Derek always found a way in. I switched up my routine, thinking maybe I could throw him off. Started taking different routes to work, hitting up new spots, even grocery shopping at the most random times. But then, I came home to find our old photo album sitting on my coffee table, open to a picture of us at the beach. I knew I had left that album in Chicago. There was no way it could have just shown up here. That's when it hit me. Derek was doing this. He wasn't just stalking me. He was leaving these things to mess with my head, to remind me that no matter where I went, he could always find me. I went to the cops, but they weren't much help. Stalking's hard to prove, they said. We'll keep an eye out, but unless he does something physical, there's not much we can do. Yeah, super comforting, right? I started losing sleep, jumping at every little noise, constantly looking over my shoulder. One night, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed the bat I kept by my bed and crept into the living room. The front window was shattered, glass everywhere, but no one was there. And there, in the middle of the floor, was the bracelet he had given me for my birthday, the one I had pawned off after we broke up. I called the cops again, but by the time they showed up, Derek was long gone. They checked the security footage, but all they saw was a shadow slipping through the yard. Too quick, too blurry to make out who it was. That's when I knew Derek wasn't just messing with me. He was serious. He wanted me to know that no matter what I did, I couldn't escape him. The fear was suffocating, like I was being slowly strangled by my own thoughts. So, I made a dumb move. I called him. I know, but I just wanted it to stop. He picked up on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for me. His voice was so cold, so detached. I was wondering when you'd call, he said, all smug. We met at a busy cafe downtown. I thought I'd be safe in public, but the second I saw him, I knew I'd made a mistake. He looked exactly the same, calm, in control, and totally unfazed. He even smiled at me, like this was just another date or something, not like he hadn't been terrorizing me for weeks. I begged him to stop, told him I didn't want to involve the cops, that I just wanted to be left alone. He leaned in real close, his voice barely a whisper. "You'll never be alone," he said. "I'll always be with you, even when you don't see me." I left that cafe shaking, feeling like I'd just signed my own death warrant. Derek wasn't gonna let me go. He was gonna haunt me forever, and there was nothing I could do about it. The days after that were a blur. I was just going through the motions, barely functioning. Derek didn't need to leave anything anymore. He was in my head, messing with me 24/7. I knew he was still out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again. One evening, I came home to find my door slightly open, a cruel message left on the doorstep. I just broke down, knowing that I'd lost everything. I called the cops, but they didn't have much hope. "Sometimes these things just take time," they said. But I knew time was running out. Now I'm packing up, ready to run again. I don't know where I'll go, but I know I can't stay. Derek will follow me, I'm sure of it, but maybe, just maybe I can stay one step ahead. As I load the last of my things into my car, I catch a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, standing at the edge of the street, smiling. There's no escaping him. But I have to try. I have to keep moving, keep fighting, because if I don't, I know he'll win. And that's something I can never let happen. I've been traveling the country for about a year now, making a living doing reviews of restaurants, hotels, and pretty much any place that catches my eye. My following has grown, and it's been awesome connecting with people in every city I visit. Being 25 and doing what I love, it's a dream. But lately, things have gotten weird. It all started a few weeks ago. I was editing a video for a review I did at a little cafe in Tampa when I noticed something strange. In the background, there was this girl, mid-20s, dark hair, kinda hard to miss. She wasn't just in one shot, she was in every shot, sitting there, watching me. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was just a customer who happened to be there while I was filming. But then, it happened again and again. I'm not the paranoid type, but after noticing her in videos from 3 different spots around Tampa, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I started scanning my footage more carefully, and there she was, always in the background, always watching. Who was she? And how did she know where I'd be? The next review was at this trendy restaurant in Ybor City. I made sure to scan the place before setting up my camera. No sign of her. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little relief. Maybe it was just a coincidence, or maybe she was another reviewer like me, checking out the same spots. I pushed the thoughts aside and focused on my review, describing the food, the ambiance, the usual. But as I was leaving, I noticed her. She was sitting in a car across the street. Her eyes locked on me as I walked out. A chill ran down my spine. How long had she been there? I tried to brush it off as nothing, but my mind was racing. Was I posting too much about my location? Was I giving away too many details about where I'd be and when? I decided to be more careful. I started posting my location updates with a delay, only uploading videos after I'd already moved on to the next city. But it didn't matter. The next place I went to review, a quirky little diner in Hyde Park, she was already there. This time, she wasn't just in the background, she was sitting at the counter when I walked in. I tried to act normal, going through the motions of setting up my camera and starting the review. My heart was pounding, but I didn't want to let on that I'd noticed her. Just as I was about to start filming, she came up to me, all smiles. "Hey, you're Jake, right? I'm a huge fan. I've been following your reviews for months. It's so cool to finally meet you in person." She seemed harmless enough, enthusiastic, maybe a little too much, but I'd met fans before. We chatted for a bit, and she told me she was from Tampa, had seen my post about being in the area, and just had to come say hi. She said all the right things to make me feel at ease, complimenting my work, talking about her favorite videos, even asking about my favorite places to visit. By the end of it, I was feeling pretty stupid for ever being suspicious. Before I knew it, she'd invited herself to join me for my next review. I didn't see the harm in it. She seemed nice enough, and it would be fun to have company for a change. We agreed to meet the next day at a new restaurant I was planning to check out. The next day she was there, right on time. We did the review together, and it actually went really well. She had great energy, knew a lot about the city, and seemed genuinely interested in what I was doing. Afterward, she mentioned she was in the area for a while and suggested we hang out more. I didn't think much of it. Having a local show me around could be fun, right? That evening, she invited herself over to my Airbnb. I can show you some cool spots to visit, and maybe we can plan out your next reviews, she said. Again, I didn't think anything of it. She'd been so nice all day, and it felt good to have someone to talk to, who seemed to really get what I was doing. She came over, and we hung out for a bit, talking about places to visit and what to review next. But as the night went on, I started to feel uneasy. She was asking a lot of questions about where I'd be staying next, my plans for the next few weeks, even my schedule. I started to realize that I'd let her into my life way too easily. The next morning, I woke up with this gnawing feeling in my gut. Something wasn't right. I started thinking about all the times I'd seen her, all the places she'd shown up, and how she seemed to know exactly where I'd be. Then it hit me. She wasn't just a fan, she'd been planning this from the start. I quickly packed up my things and got out of the Airbnb. I changed my plans, canceled the reviews I'd scheduled, and went completely off the grid for a few days. I needed time to figure out what to do next, how to shake her off my trail. As I drove out of the city, I couldn't help but glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see her car following me. I didn't see her, but I knew she was out there, waiting, watching, and I'd made the mistake of letting her get too close. Now, I'm more careful than ever. I don't post my location until I'm long gone, and I've stopped talking to fans in person. I don't trust anyone anymore. She's still out there, somewhere, with all the knowledge she needs to find me again, and that's what scares me the most.